For 3 solid weeks, my nights were not my own. They belonged to Brutus, my neighbor, Mr. Harrison's overly enthusiastic sentinel. From precisely midnight until the ungodly hour of 3 a.m., Brutus would embark on a nightly tirade, his barks not mere yaps, but deep, loud, echoing pronouncements that seemed to announce the imminent end of the world, or at the very least, the end of my sanity. This canine alarm clock was positioned strategically, it seemed, right outside my bedroom window, ensuring I had a front row seat to his relentless 3-hour vocal marathon. Sleep became a distant, cherished memory. I tried earplugs, white noise machines, even burying my head under a fortress of pillows. But Brutus's booming barks penetrated every defense. After a few nights of this torture, I approached Mr. Harrison, my neighbor to the right. Polite, reasonable, sleep-deprived Lena made her case. He just sort of smirked, a little twitch at the corner of his mouth. "He's just doing his job, love," he'd said, patting Brutus, who, of course, was silent and angelic by day. I tried again a week later, a little more frayed, a little more desperate. Same smirk, same infuriatingly dismissive line. Cool, I thought, the politeness finally snapping like an old rubber band. If he's doing his job, then I guess it's time I did mine. My job, I decided, was to restore peace and quiet to my own damn bedroom. And I had a feeling Brutus himself was going to be my most valuable, albeit unwitting, assistant. The nightly ritual was maddeningly consistent. As the clock ticked towards midnight, a knot of anxiety would tighten in my stomach. I'd be lying in bed, willing myself to fall asleep, knowing the inevitable was coming. And then, like clockwork, woof! A single booming bark to start, as if Brutus was clearing his throat for the performance. Then another and another, escalating into a relentless metronomic barrage that vibrated through my walls and rattled my very bones. It wasn't just barking. It was an opera of canine angst, a 3-hour solo that echoed through this quiet suburban night, with my bedroom as its unwilling amphitheater. I'm a reasonable person. I like dogs, generally. But Brutus, under the cover of darkness, transformed into a 4-legged instrument of torment. His barks were the kind that you felt in your chest, deep and resonant, each one a small explosion shattering the silence. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, counting the barks, then losing count, then just surrendering to the waves of sound. My work performance started to suffer. I was perpetually tired, irritable, existing in a fog of sleep deprivation. My cozy little house, my sanctuary, felt invaded. My first conversation with Mr. Harrison had been a study in neighborly diplomacy. "Hi, Mr. Harrison," I'd said, catching him as he was getting his mail. "About Brutus. He seems to be barking quite a bit at night, right outside my window. It's making it a bit hard to sleep." He was a burly man, often seen in a mechanic's jumpsuit, usually with a faint smell of oil and indifference about him. He'd given me that smirk, the one that made you feel like you were the unreasonable one. "Ah, Brutus," he chuckled. "Good boy, that one. Just letting us know he's on guard. Doing his job, protecting the property." He gave Brutus an affectionate scratch behind the ears. "He'll settle." He didn't settle. If anything, the barks seemed to gain a new level of conviction. A week later, armed with even darker circles under my eyes, I tried again. "Mr. Harrison," I began, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice, "I really need you to do something about Brutus's barking. It's every single night, for hours." This time, the smirk was wider. "Look, Lena, he's a dog. Dogs bark. That's what they do. He's just being a good guard dog. Can't fault him for doing his job, can you?" And then he turned and walked inside, leaving me standing on his doorstep, fuming and unheard. That was the turning point. The dismissal, the utter lack of consideration. the smug assumption that his dog's job superseded my basic human need for sleep, it all coalesced into a cold, hard resolve. Fine. If he wouldn't listen to reason, if he wouldn't respond to polite requests, then perhaps he'd respond to something a little more familiar, something a little closer to home. The idea began to form, simple, elegant, and beautifully ironic. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to call the authorities, not yet. I wasn't going to engage in a shouting match over the fence. No, my plan was much quieter, much more personal, and Brutus, bless his loud, inconsiderate heart, was going to be the star. My phone had an excellent recording app, and Mr. Harrison, I knew, worked the night shift at a local factory, usually getting home around 5:30 a.m., just in time for a few precious hours of sleep before his day began. The stage was set. That night, as Brutus commenced his midnight symphony of sonic assault, I was ready. Instead of burying my head under the pillows in despair, I calmly reached for my smartphone. I opened the voice recording app, placed the phone on my nightstand, angled it towards the window, and pressed record. For the next 3 hours, as Brutus barked his heart out, announcing the apocalypse to an apparently indifferent moon, my phone diligently captured every booming, echoing, sleep-shattering vocalization. It was a high-fidelity recording of my nightly torture, a perfect audio snapshot of Brutus just doing his job. By 3 sweet a.m., when he finally, blessedly fell silent, I had a solid 3-hour track of pure, unadulterated canine cacophony. I saved the file, labeling it simply Brutus's Greatest Hits. The next morning, my alarm went off at 5:15 a.m. Normally, this would have been a cruel joke after another night of fragmented sleep, but today I felt a strange sense of energized anticipation. I made a cup of strong coffee, the first I'd truly looked forward to in weeks. I then retrieved my best portable Bluetooth speaker, a surprisingly powerful little unit known for its clear, robust sound. I connected it to my phone, queued up Brutus's Greatest Hits, and checked the time. 5:55 a.m. Mr. Harrison would be home, probably just settling into bed, looking forward to his own well-deserved rest after a long night shift. Quietly, I slipped out my back door and approached the side of his house, the wall that adjoined his bedroom. I knew this because I'd heard his snoring through it on the rare occasions Brutus granted us a silent night. I placed the speaker on a small garden stool I'd brought, aiming it directly at his bedroom wall. Then, taking a deep breath and resisting the urge to cackle maniacally, I pressed play and turned the volume up, all the way up. The effect was instantaneous and glorious. Brutus's recorded barks, now amplified and directed, erupted into the quiet dawn. It was Brutus in quadraphonic sound, Brutus in surround sound, Brutus with bass boost. My own recording was so clear, so resonant, it sounded as if the dog himself was in Mr. Harrison's bedroom, performing a private, very loud concert just for him. I retreated to my own kitchen, sipping my coffee, listening with immense satisfaction. There was no shouting from next door, no angry banging on the wall, just the relentless, amplified barking of his own dog, giving him a taste of the medicine I'd been forced to swallow for weeks. I let the recording play for a solid hour from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., an hour of prime sleep time for a night shift worker, an hour of his own dog's job being done, just for him. Then, just as calmly as I'd started it, I turned it off, retrieved my speaker, and went about my day, feeling lighter than I had in ages. There were no confrontations, no angry words exchanged when I saw Mr. Harrison later that day. He looked tired, exceptionally so, and perhaps a little bewildered. He didn't meet my eye. Round one to Lena, I thought, and Brutus, of course. The next morning, the routine was identical. Alarm at 5:15 a.m., strong coffee, portable speaker. Brutus's greatest hits, volume maximum. Target, Mr. Harrison's bedroom wall. Play. From 6:00 a.m. to 7:00 a.m., the dawn chorus in our little corner of the neighborhood was once again dominated by the amplified, recorded barks of Brutus, the canine alarm clock, now serving his master in a way Mr. Harrison had clearly never anticipated. I wondered, as I sipped my coffee on that second morning of my campaign, what was going through his head. Was he confused? Was he angry? Was he, just perhaps, starting to connect the dots between his dog's nightly serenades and his own rudely interrupted morning slumbers? I made sure I was visible in my garden around the time he usually emerged, bleary-eyed, for his morning paper. He saw me. This time there was no smirk, just a tired, slightly wary glance. He didn't say anything. I just offered a polite, neutral nod and went back to tending my roses. The key to this, I felt, was the lack of direct confrontation. No yelling, no threats, no accusatory notes left on his door. Just the undeniable, inescapable sound of his own dog, mirrored back at him at the most inconvenient possible time. It was a psychological game, a gentle but firm re-education in neighborly consideration, with Brutus as the unwitting tutor. My commitment to the plan was absolute. I was prepared to repeat this performance every single morning if necessary. I had hours of Brutus's barking recorded now, a veritable library of his nocturnal pronouncements. I could mix it up, create new playlists. Brutus, the Midnight Howls, Brutus, 3A, and Fury. The possibilities were endless. I wasn't enjoying his discomfort, not exactly, but I was profoundly enjoying the feeling of taking control, of addressing a problem he had so callously dismissed, using a method that was both undeniably effective and, in its own way, perfectly just. He wanted Brutus to do his job. Fine. Brutus was now doing his job for everyone, just at different times of day. The beauty of it was its simplicity. I wasn't breaking any laws. I was on my own property, playing a recording of sounds that originated from his property. It was a closed loop of auditory feedback. The tension, for me, was in the waiting. Would it work? How long would it take for the message to sink in? Would he confront me? And if he did, what would I say? Oh, that's just Brutus, doing his job. Can't fault him for it, can you? The thought made me smile. By the end of that second morning's concert, I felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere between our houses. The usual morning sounds from his side, the clatter of him getting ready for his day after his presumed sleep, were absent. There was just quiet. A tired, perhaps resentful, quiet, but quiet nonetheless. I allowed myself a small measure of hope. Perhaps the student was beginning to learn the lesson. The anticipation for what night 3 and subsequently morning 3 might bring was considerable. My resolve hadn't wavered. My speaker was charged, and Brutus's greatest hits was ready for an encore if needed. Night 3 arrived, and with it, the familiar pre-midnight tension. I lay in bed, not with dread this time, but with a curious anticipation. Would Brutus begin his usual concert? Would I need to deploy my own audio artillery in the morning? Midnight came and went. Silence. 12:30 a.m. Still silence. Beautiful, blessed silence. Nas 1 m. 2 a.m. 3 a.m. The hours that had previously been filled with Brutus's booming pronouncements passed in an unbroken, peaceful quiet. I couldn't quite believe it. I strained my ears, listening for even a distant woof, but there was nothing. The next morning, I woke naturally, without an alarm, feeling more rested than I had in weeks. It was almost disorienting. I went through my morning routine, a sense of cautious optimism blooming. I kept an ear out, half expecting to hear the telltale sounds of Mr. Harrison's interrupted sleep, if my plan had failed, and Brutus had barked after all. But there was nothing. Later that day, as I was leaving for work, I saw Mr. Harrison in his yard. He was bringing Brutus inside the house. Not just into the backyard, but through his back door, into the house itself. This was a first. Brutus had always been an exclusively outside dog, as far as I knew. Mr. Harrison saw me looking. He didn't smirk. He didn't scowl. He just gave a curt, almost imperceptible nod, then disappeared inside with his dog. And that was it. From that day forward, Brutus was inside before 10 p.m. every single night. The midnight to 3 a.m. barking concerts ceased completely. My nights were restored to their rightful, peaceful quiet. My sleep became deep and uninterrupted. The dark circles under my eyes faded. My little suburban street was once again a haven of nocturnal tranquility. I never played Brutus's greatest hits again. There was no need. The message, delivered not with angry words, but with his own dog's amplified voice, had clearly been received and understood. We never spoke of the incident, Mr. Harrison and I. There were no apologies, no explanations, no further discussions about Brutus doing his job. There was just a new, unspoken understanding between us, and, most importantly, blessed silence during the night. Sometimes, the most effective solutions are the simplest, the most direct. Sometimes, you don't need to escalate, to threaten, to engage in protracted conflict. Sometimes, the best revenge, the most satisfying resolution, is simply pressing play and letting people experience a carefully curated taste of their own medicine. My little audio experiment had worked perfectly, restoring peace to my nights without a single raised voice. And Brutus, well, I imagine he was enjoying his new indoor sleeping arrangements just as much as I was enjoying the silence. When faced with a neighbor whose consideration is as absent as your sleep, remember that direct confrontation isn't always the only answer. Sometimes a little creative problem solving, a touch of irony, and the strategic application of their own particular brand of nuisance can be far more effective. You don't always need to bark louder. Sometimes you just need to find the right recording and press play at the perfect moment. Peace and quiet can be achieved in the most unexpected and satisfying ways.